Good evening. We are in the 13th chapter of Tanya, and we're continuing to analyze the personality of the Beinoni. How the Beinoni, on one hand, he is like the tzaddik because he's in control of his actions. And just the tzaddik does what's right and doesn't do what's wrong. The Beinoni does what's right and doesn't do what's wrong. The difference is in what's going on inside of him. Inside of him, the tzaddik is pure. He doesn't have the impulses that could even lead to anything close to sinfulness. But the Beinoni, inside of him is brewing a volcano. And that volcano brings to the fore impulses and urges that may even be urges that are sinful. But the Beinoni rises to the challenge and controls himself. And he's in complete control. We're going to elaborate more on that. And we're going to respond. Over here, the Alter Rebbe responds to the question that he raised in the first chapter, where he brought the Gemara, the opening line of Tanya. Tanya, mashbina, he say, ti tzaddik v'al ti rash. Make a person swear, be a tzaddik and don't be a rash. V'afilu kol ha'olam kula erim lach tzaddik ata, heyei be'enecha karash. Even if the whole world tells you you're a tzaddik, in your eyes, consider yourself a rash. And on that point, the Alter Rebbe in the first chapter asked the question, how do we expect a person to consider himself like a rasha? The whole world says you're a tzaddik, and you consider yourself like a rasha. So if a person actually consider himself like a rasha, he is going to become depressed, because if he's a rasha, that means he's a failure in his morality, and he'll be depressed. If, on the other hand, the realization or the consideration that he considers himself a rasha and he's not depressed, that means he doesn't care. And if he doesn't care, this will bring a person to callous. He'll take it light. If you consider yourself like a rasha and you don't care about it, then the whole Torah, you'll take it lightly. All morality is lightly. It's not important. So why does the Gemara say, even if the whole world says you're tzaddik, in your eyes be a rasha? If the whole world says you're tzaddik, they may be up to something. And it may be even false. So over here he's going to follow through with that. And based on this new understanding of Beinoni, that the Beinoni is not a person who sins half of the time and does mitzvahs half of the time. The Beinoni is someone who is in control all of the time. But it's his struggle that he always has, or has much of the time, that makes him to be considered in his eyes like a rasha. And since the evil, the selfishness, the materialism in the Beinoni is strong, like when he was born, and he desires and lusts after all the pleasures of the world. And his physicality and the evil that he has in him has not been nullified. It hasn't been beaten out of him. It hasn't even been pushed aside. It's deep inside of him, in his heart, the left side of the heart. We spoke about the place. It has a place in us. And the place in us It's its own little cave. And in its place, it still is there. It's only that he doesn't have control. The evil in him, his Yetzer Hara, doesn't have a control to express itself, to spread itself around, out of its own cave, to be in control or to express itself in action. Because Hashem is supporting him. Because Hashem shines a light in his conscious and in his godly soul, and that light enables him to control himself. And that's why he's called like a rasha. In Hebrew, like in all language, there's grammar. So there's the grammar, the fine nuance that's coming across in the grammar. It doesn't say that you should consider yourself a rasha or to be a rasha. It says consider yourself that you are like a rasha. There's a big difference. If you consider yourself to be a rasha and he really believes that, then he's going to have that problem that was raised in the question mentioned before. He'll either be depressed or he's going to become careless and take lightly all of Torah mitzvahs. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, let's focus on the wording of this oath. You should be a tzaddik, not a rasha, and even if the whole world says to you, you're a tzaddik, be in your eyes like a rasha, not a rasha. K'maimer Azal, afilu kol olam kuleim lach tzaddik ata heya benecha k'rasha. V'loi rasha mamish. Not literally, consider yourself a rasha, literally. Ele sheyachzik atzmo lebeinani. He should consider himself to be like the beinani. V'loi lahamin laha'olim sha'oimim sha'rasha bo nizbatel l'gabei ha'toiv shazu madreges tzaddik. When the people are saying he's a tzaddik, he shouldn't believe them that he's a tzaddik in the definition that the Tanya gives for tzaddik, someone who inside and outside is pure and holy. So the fact that the people consider him a tzaddik because they see him do only good, and he also is aware of only good that he does and never gets into trouble, never does anything bad. But what's going on inside? The people can't see what's going on inside of him. They can't see what's going on in his heart. Does he have the turmoil and the inner struggle that the Beinani has? So therefore, he should consider himself, even if the whole world says he's a tzaddik, he should consider himself like a rasha. Now, Ela yir be'inav ki l'muhusei v'atzmusei sha'arahu b'takva v'gvarasei b'chalas molek l'odasei v'lechalav v'halach memena mu'uma. He should consider himself like in his heart, there's still evil. And even if he doesn't have a conscious inner struggle, like he's going to explain later, it could be he doesn't feel that inner struggle. Nevertheless, it could be there's still in his heart evil, which is not bringing in him the inner struggle. He has a volcano, perhaps, that is not erupting. But like all volcanoes, it could be a moment when the volcano will erupt. But he should not look at himself to be a tzaddik just by the virtue of the fact that he's always doing right. There are the issues that are going on inside. Now, this brings us to what I think is important to speak about is really this is a question of how do you judge yourself? The people are saying you're a tzaddik, and you're judging yourself, and you say, don't consider yourself like tzaddik, judge yourself beinani. You should judge yourself and consider yourself lesser than what you are. Why is that important? And why specifically for a Beinoni? Now the importance of this, especially emphasized in the Hasidic literature, it's also before, especially in the Kabbalah. And that is that a person should make an assessment of himself. Especially, for example, in the literature they speak about before Rosh Hashanah, he should make a cheshbon tzedek. He should make a calculation of how he is doing. Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment. How is he doing? How's his character? How's his anger? How's his davening? How's his Torah study? How's his tzedakah? How is he doing? And just like in a business, at the end of the year, you have an accountant makes a calculation, the credits, the debits, the profit, the loss. He's making the whole calculation because you have to analyze it. And why is it so important? Because if you analyze yourself, you analyze your business, you're going to understand how to better run your business. Similarly, this is called a cheshbon tzedek, a memari de chushbana, to be a master of your account, to be your own accountant. So therefore, there has to be a self-awareness. In the Hasidic literature, they speak about krishmer shalamit. Before you go to sleep, and you say the Shema by the bedside, you should also make a calculation of how your day went. That's why by krishmer shalamita, we beat our chest, and we say, I did this wrong, I did that wrong. I forgive everybody that hurt me, and so on. Because you're supposed to settle your accounts, at least for the day's activities, even at night. Even at night. Some do it some make an accounting once a week, a Thursday night before Shabbos. Then there's the accounting that we do before Rosh Hashanah. And we're supposed to judge ourselves to see where we stand. And the previous Rebbe once wrote, just like you are supposed to know your faults, you're also supposed to know your qualities. Don't exaggerate your faults. Don't say you're a Rasha if you're not a Rasha. Don't say you're a tzaddik if you're not a tzaddik. Say it the way it is. Just like an accountant, he's supposed to give you a real assessment of what's going on. Where are the strong points and where are the weak points of the business. So now, in this context, he's saying, even if the whole world says you're a tzaddik, in your eyes you should be a rasha. So first of all, he said it doesn't mean literally a rasha, because that's not good. If you're going to exaggerate your evil, then first of all, if it's not so, if you're going to exaggerate it, it means it's not exactly the way you're saying it. So you're putting yourself down. If you're putting yourself down, you're going to be depressed. If you're not going to be depressed, you're giving yourself perhaps a green light to do more evil. And this is a psychological trick that Yetzer Hara is playing with you. So I'm a Rasha. Why? Because you use profane language, or you lost your temper, or you did some sin. So, but you're doing good. You're volunteering. You're helping others. You're doing good. But you want to consider yourself a Rasha because I don't want to be bound by doing good. Because if I'm a Rasha, I have a green light to do whatever I want. So that's not good either. And that may be the Yetzer Hara, putting your ideas, false humility. It's not real humility, it's false humility. It's the gimmick of humility that the Yetzer Hara is playing with you to say, oh, you're a Rasha. But specifically in Tanya, he's speaking about the person, he's telling everybody, even if the whole world says you're tzaddik, you should consider yourself like a Rasha. Why like a Rasha? Okay, it's not a Rasha. He changed the definition. He pointed out the grammatical difference between literally a Rasha, who's a sinner, and the Beinoni, who's like a Rasha. Why is he emphasizing that part of the Beinoni, that it's like a Rasha? The Beinoni is also like a tzaddik, isn't he? And that's a question anyone could ask. You're telling me it's like you're not a Rasha, you're like a Rasha. Why you like a Rasha? Because inside you still have not removed the Yetzer Hara from its place inside. So you're like a Rasha, but you're also like a tzaddik. Why don't you be more positive? Certainly today's psychologist says, emphasize the positive. And the truth is, like we started discussing before the class, a good coach is judgmental. A good psychiatrist is judgmental because he wants to bring out the best of you. So he's saying, this thing you did good, this thing you did right. He doesn't want to destroy your self-confidence. You have to have self-confidence. And when the whole world is telling you you're a tzaddik, you serious life like a Rasha, it's not to beat your self-confidence when you need to have a certain amount of self-confidence. And after all, Hashem put you in this world and gave you the Torah and gave you an neshama and gave you the talents and the capability to lead a righteous life. And if you don't believe that, then you have a problem about the whole structure of Torah and mitzvahs. So you do have to believe that Hashem put you over here, and Hashem has confidence in you to do what's right. So the self-assessment and the self-judgment has to be such that is true, that is accurate. So why are we emphasizing in your eyes like a Rasha? Why not like a tzaddik? So I think this is connected with another Mishnah. It says, Al tama ba'atzmecha ad yom ha'ischa. Don't believe in yourself that you are already all right and done until the day you die. Also, very, very tough words that the Mishnah is saying. So much not like contemporary advice. The message over here is, don't be overconfident in yourself. Just because you're doing what's right until now, don't think that it's not possible for you to have a moral fall. So many times, people who can be so critical of others who are doing something wrong and judging the morality of other people who did immoral acts, and they say, how come that person did that? And they're bashing another person. And then soon, or sooner, or maybe later, or maybe even much later, this same person does something immoral. It doesn't necessarily mean that the person, the critic, the earlier critic, is a faker or he is a hypocrite. It was just before that he was not challenged. And it's possible, what the Mishnah is saying, it's possible for everybody, any time, to be put into a situation that his integrity is tested, that his morality is tested, and he shouldn't be so sure of the outcome. If he is overconfident in himself and he's saying, well, I'm a 50-year-old man, I'm happily married, I'm prominent, and therefore there's no risk for me to get involved in a situation. So the Mishnah says, don't be overconfident in yourself. Don't believe that it's impossible for you to be tested or tempted or to become immoral. So it's healthy for the person to be on guard and not take himself for granted in any way. He shouldn't take himself for granted, not his evil, and he shouldn't take for granted his goodness. And that's why we're telling him, in your eyes you should be like a Rasha. Yes, the Beinoni, who we're talking about, the Beinoni personality here, we're telling a regular person, strive to be a Beinoni. And even if the whole world says you're a tzaddik, in your eyes you should think you're like a Rasha. What does it mean, like a Rasha? But I never did anything wrong. I know I never did anything wrong. The whole world knows that I never did anything. They're all saying I'm a tzaddik. But still be on guard. And be like a Rasha, to be on guard that there's still a possibility that there is a latent volcano, latent evil. There's a latent volcano in there that may explode any day. And if you're not on guard, and you say, well, I'm a tzaddik, I can walk anywhere, I can look anywhere, I could engage in any type of frivolous activity because I'm a tzaddik. Be in your eyes like a Rasha. And that is going to guarantee that you'll be on guard. But you'll say, well, but it's not true. But I am a tzaddik. I'm always doing right. And here we go back to the definition of the Beinoni. The tzaddik is inside and outside holy. The tzaddik has no volcano. Evil is so, he rejected evil to the extreme that we're not talking about that type of personality. We're talking about personality who's living an upright life. But nevertheless, 99% of us are not tzaddikim, and there is latent, a very strong probability that even if he's not aware of it, there's some latent evil in him. And that is part of his judgment of himself. He also has to be concerned. As he gets older, on one hand, he thinks, well, I'm already settled. But on the other hand, his habits have been baked in. He's been, his body, his physicality, the older one person gets, as the years go by, it means 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, he's been tuned into his flesh and the pleasures of the flesh. So what is his closest sense? His closest senses are the senses of his body. And since the closest senses are the senses of his body, so therefore, in a moment's notice, this can come to the fore. So therefore, he always has to be on guard. Now he's taking this a step further. So he defined the Gemara, he answered the original question, and he also gave us a certain guidance about how we should judge ourselves, how do we should make the calculations of ourselves. So he says, what about a Torah scholar? Someone who's always studying, or a yeshiva bacher. He's studying day and night. And he's doing it lishma. He's doing it for the mitzvah. That doesn't prove that the evil has been totally eradicated from his inner self. And this I think we were discussing the other week. You look at a yeshiva bacher, you look at a person who is very religious, or you look at yourself as being very moral and very straight. That doesn't prove that the evil that's inside of us, the selfishness, has been totally dislodged. And this is also a lesson in self-assessment, in judgment of self, of analyzing self, of making that calculation of self. Because a person can be very much doing the right thing all of the time, and there could be some latent evil or selfishness or negativity deep inside of him. There is a mimer that the Rebbe said it was considered a change, a mimer that may change, and some of the elder Hasidim at the time were very moved and became Hasidim of the Rebbe. This was in 1952. The Rebbe took leadership of Chabad in 1950. The previous Rebbe was an old school Rebbe, for no better word. Old school, he dressed like a Rebbe, he wore a spodik, and he came from Russia, and he was educated totally in an atmosphere in a home of Rebbe. But our Rebbe, who became Rebbe in 1950 here in America, he wore a hat, like a black hat down. He wore light-colored suits before that. He had a very strong secular education. He didn't necessarily have the standard image of a Rebbe. And therefore, some of the elder Hasidim, they were not so comfortable, let's say, with this new image of a Rebbe. On the other hand, the Rebbe was a great Torah scholar because they saw his scholarship. Some of his scholarship was already printed because his father-in-law urged him to make footnotes on Hasidic discourses. And in the footnotes that the Rebbe made, he was relatively young, and he was not the Rebbe then. He was working for his father-in-law. And when they saw those footnotes, they saw this is a genius who knows all of the Talmud, all of the Kabbalah, all of the Medrash. There isn't an area in Torah literature, vast Torah literature, that he wasn't thorough in it and with a deep understanding of it. So everyone knew that he's a brilliant in Torah. He's a brilliant man, very noble character, but some of the older people still were in change. But then he said a mimer in 1952, Leisiya Mishakela, was the name of this mimer. On the first verse of that mimer was the pasuk, Leisiya Mishakela. And in that mimer, which I'm not going to refute the whole mimer, but I'm going to say a thought of that mimer that is connected with what we're saying. He mentioned Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was the Jewish leader, who was, let's say, the Rebbe in his time, the time of the Roman occupation. And this was the Romans, at that time, they destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. And the Jewish leader, his name was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he reorganized Judaism after the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash, after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. He reorganized it in a way that defines Yiddishkeit to this day. He told the Roman leader, at least allow the Torah scholars to remain and to live. And saving the Torah scholars was, so to say, the energy and the brains of the future of Judaism, even when the Romans destroyed everything physical. But the brains, the treasury of the Yiddishkeit and of the Torah knowledge and Torah leadership wasn't destroyed. So, this Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who led this change on his deathbed, surrounded by some of his closest disciples, he said, I'm not sure in which direction they're going to take me after my passing. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai isn't sure in which direction they're going to take him. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the Rebbe in the worst of times, in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, and he reorganized Yiddishkeit. And the Yiddishkeit we have today is thanks to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And he doesn't know in which direction they're going to take him down or they're going to take him up. He's not sure where they're going to take him. So the Rebbe asked, what's going on here? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, was he pretending? False humility is not humility. And he's telling to his closest disciples, I'm not sure which direction they're going to take me. So the Rebbe explained that he really meant what he was saying. But he looked at himself in a way that he never had time to see himself before. Certainly in the last years of his life, when he assumed leadership of the Jewish people, which was for decades before his passing, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was busy with Klal Yisrael. He was busy dealing with the Yidden, he was busy dealing with the Romans, he was busy dealing with halachic issues, he was busy dealing with political issues, with the turmoil in the Jewish community. There was, should they rebel against the Romans? Should they not rebel against the Romans? Should they surrender? Should they not surrender? Where? What's going on? And then to teach Torah, to keep Torah alive, so he was busy teaching. He never assessed himself. He had no time to think about himself. He had no time to think about not about his physical needs and not about his spiritual needs. Now when he's on his deathbed, he's saying to him, he's looking at himself the first time for decades and thinking, what about me? What about what's going on inside of me? Perhaps maybe there's some latent evil in me that I never had an opportunity to address. Maybe there's some subconscious evil or selfishness. I never even thought about myself because I was so busy serving Klal Yisrael. And the point that the Rebbe was making was that all of us, there's two sides. On one hand, we should be so busy doing what's good and not be wasting a minute. And look at Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He was so busy doing that he had no time for self-assessment. And therefore, at the end, he's saying, I don't know which direction it's going to take me. He knew he was doing all the time good. But that doesn't prove what's really inside. And therefore, coming back to Tanya, it's possible someone who is studying Torah, he also should say, he considers himself in his eyes, I'm like a Rasha. I'm studying Torah day and night. I'm involved in helping the Jewish community day and night. And I've been doing this all the time and I'm very dedicated. Don't think that you are already guaranteed that it's impossible for you to have a moral fall. In your eyes, consider yourself like a Rasha as well. It's possible that this person subconsciously has some latent evil, and in its place, there still is that cocoon, that cave, where the Yetzer Hara is still there. He has in himself some evil. The Yetzer Hara is there. There's selfishness in there. There's a potential for a volcano to erupt. But that evil that he has, he thinks is not there, because it never came to the fore physically to express itself with his hands to do something wrong, with his mouth to say something wrong, and with his brain to think something wrong. It didn't occupy his body. So just because evil you were not possessed with evil physically, even in the sight of sight, does not mean that in its original place it has been lodged. And why didn't it come to the fore? Because as we learned before, the mind controls the heart, so he was always controlling himself. The mind controls the body. So the body is pure. But what's going on inside? The Beinoni still has in himself the possibility for evil. It's just that in the body has not been expressed. Is the godly soul is in control, and the godly soul turned the body into an instrument that should express good, mitzvahs. So since by the Beinoni, the godly soul is in control. So what is he actually doing from day to day activities? Is doing what's right. So the godly soul is in control of what? Of the body, of his actions. But what about inside? Did the godly soul was the godly soul successful in dislodging the bear from its cave? Is this a cave that's empty of evil? Is there no place in the left side of his heart for evil? Not by a Beinoni. By a Beinoni, the godly soul is not able to change the essence of the animal soul. There's the essence of the animal soul, and then there's the animal soul expressing itself and doing what it wants to do. So just because the person is in control of himself, the godly soul is in control of his body, and therefore he's not acting out on anything. But what about inside? That it didn't necessarily happen. It only by the Beinoni we learned before. The Beinoni has his moments when his godly soul does enter the cave, so to say. When the godly soul permeates his heart, and that's when he davens, and even in his heart of flesh feels a love for Hashem. Only when he davens, when he has a passion for davening, only then is the godly soul reach inside of him. And even when it reaches out of him, it doesn't change him really. It's in control of him. And even when he is davening with the passion, it's not so much that the animal soul developed a real passion for godliness, for the spirit, and for purpose and meaning in life. It's that the godly soul was in control of him and for a moment convinced him to love Hashem. But it's not that it really changed him. So therefore, there's still latent evil in him. Now he say a line over here which I found interesting. It's a bit Kabbalistic. He says, so how does the godly soul have it in him to control him? What are the tools that the godly soul used? So he had before, he said in chapter 12, that there is moyech shalat al lev, that nature, Hashem programmed in our nature that the mind rules over the heart. So therefore the urges and the impulses can be controlled by the mind. Here he's going to add a sentence that's a bit Kabbalistic from the Kabbalah, but it gives us another understanding of how exactly this works. So he says, "Shenefesh halikis misametzes umisgaberes al nefesh habahamis b'maker hagvure shehi bina." The source of strength is in understanding. Now in Kabbalah, this is a term. There's gvurais, and the source of gvurais is from the Kabbalistic sphere of bina. And it's because the person does this Kabbalah process of bringing Gevurais from its source in Bina, that empowers him to control his animal soul. So let's speak a little Kabbalah. Strength. What is strength? You need a certain amount of strength to control yourself. In fact, the Mishnah says, who is strong? Ezu giber hakoivesh es yitzray. Who conquers his Yetzer Hara, who conquers his impulses. The muscle heads in popular society think, what is strength? If you win a boxing match or a wrestling match, that is strength. If you pick up weights, that is strength. And the Mishnah says, who is strong? Who controls himself? So which is strength? Controlling yourself takes inner strength. And in fact, from what I hear about boxing, the boxer that's going to win is the one who's going to take the punches. And there's a whole strategy, even in boxing, about being disciplined and in control, and being able to take the punches until the right moment comes. Because strength is not the one who moves big things by itself and knocks out bigger people than him by itself. It's to bring out, even in that type of strength, even in physical strength, the one who's really going to be the strong one is when he's going to have the strength of character to dig deeper into himself, to not give up, and to find a strength and a resilience to actually be victorious. And that's what the Mishnah is saying. Who is strong? Who overcomes his Yetzer Hara. He overcomes his inclinations, his urges, his impulses. That is the one who is really strong. And that's what's called in Hebrew Gevura. Gevura. Now in the 10 spheres, when we speak about the qualities of Hashem and the qualities which we inherit from Hashem, there's strength, Gevura. Now, what does he say over here? What does the Kabbalah say? That the Gevura comes from understanding. Now, we learned in an earlier chapter that emotions come from intelligence. Emotions come from intelligence. So, in other words, the mind not only controls ourselves, but the mind gives birth to feelings. So if you want to reshape your feelings about something, think about it, meditate about it, and you will be able to first reshape your mind and have positive ideas about it and think about how good it's for you. make some kind of a cell therapy, or maybe some therapist is going to show you and explain to you, and you're going to think about it and realize first intellectually how this is good for you, and that eventually will bring you to have feelings. That's where the feelings come from, the mind. So specifically, the Kabbalah says that the feelings that are connected with strength come from the intellectual quality of understanding. Understanding is not just wisdom, because we learned in Tanya, also in the earlier chapter, the 3rd chapter, that in the mind, in intelligence, there's the creative mind, the chachma, the flash, the idea, and then there's bina, is to develop the idea and to define it. That type of intelligence, developing and defining in a clear way the idea, that's going to bring to strength and to feelings in general, but specifically to strength. Why? Because the quality of bina needs discipline. Because how do you really understand the idea? When you have point 1, 2, 3, 4, you break it down, you define it. You have to have a certain amount of rigidity. It's a rigid, clear cut. It can't be in general. If you're speaking in general terms, you're not going to have clarity, and you're not going to have a good understanding. It has to be scientific, so to say. And scientific has rules and has a certain amount of rigidity, a certain amount of discipline. So there's intellectual discipline, and from that intellectual discipline there also comes to discipline of character. That's what the Gvuras is from Bina. And this is how the godly soul works, if we want to break it down. How it works for mind to control the heart. It's not that he's going to wake up in the morning and he has an impulse, says, well, I don't want to do that. I'm going to control myself. Why? Because it's bad for me. If you're just going to say, you think you're going to wake up in the morning and say, well, it says in Tanya, mind over matter. And you're going to say to yourself, mind over matter, so I'm going to control myself. No. You have to focus and think how this thing is, this idea or suggestion that's in front of me that's bad, why it's bad, and why I should do it. I shouldn't do it. Practically speaking, in parentheses, we're moving so fast, we have no time to think. That's part of our problem. Things, impulses come one after another. But to be in control of yourself, you have to be disciplined. And it starts in the mind. And it starts thinking about the lifestyle that I want, the quality of life that I want, the meaning and purpose that I want. And it's first defining it and clarifying it. And he's specifically over here about his Yiddishkeit, Lisbonim L'Dulas Hashem Ein Sof Baruch Hu, to think and meditate about the greatness of Hashem. So his life is related to Hashem. You should think my life is about Hashem. Hashem made me. He's looking at me. He's watching me. He invested in me. He gave me the Torah. He wants me to be successful in life and have meaning and purpose in life. So first we have to have this awareness of Hashem in our life. And if we meditate and think about it, this is going to move us to have feelings and a love for Hashem. And then we'll be able to bend and control our Yetzer Hara and control ourselves. But it doesn't mean that it's gone. So we put in a lot of effort. And, as I said many times when we're learning Tanya, sometimes when I read some of these lines, I think to myself, am I thinking so in depth about the greatness of Hashem? Am I spending that much time that I'm thinking to the degree of the greatness of Hashem that I'm developing such a passionate love And as I do it on Wednesday and Tuesday and Thursday and every day and on a regular day or maybe once in a while. But he's giving us a certain direction and a certain message that it's important for us all of the time. So he's saying about the Beinoni personality, there are tools of how he could shape himself and form himself to be a person that does what's right and control himself. But Avaloin is battle agamri bebeinoni. He didn't move it completely away. It didn't dislodge his Yetzer Hara the Beinoni. Ela b'tzadik shenema bo v'libo chal b'kirbei. Only a tzaddik which it said of him that his heart is empty of evil. Hu moyes beravasayne betachas hasin v'amiyas. And the tzaddik, the complete tzaddik, he despises evil. There's incomplete tzaddik, he doesn't despise evil to the T, so to say. So the Beit Tzaddik, they dislodged evil from themselves. They're not going to have any impulses. A Beinoni is like, for example, a person who's asleep. He can get up. So are you going to go into a place that doesn't belong to you because the person's asleep? No, if you have sense, you're not going to go into such a place because the person's going to wake up and you're going to get into trouble. So you have to tread lightly. The Beinoni has Yetzer Hara, but it's asleep. The evil that's in a Beinoni is like it's asleep in his left side. Like we said many times, it's the bear that's asleep in his cave. By Beinoni, even when he's davening, even when he's learning, even when he's on fire with Hashem. So here we're talking about a very religious person who's having a very high religious experience. It doesn't mean that the bear is not there. It's that the bear is asleep. But when you finish his davening, the bear could wake up. And that's what we said in the 12th chapter, the Beinoni, after davening, suddenly he becomes aware of his own physicality and even sensuality, and he can have urges which are even inappropriate certainly for where he was 10 minutes ago when he was davening with such a passion. We spoke in the first chapter about Rabbah. Rabbah was a Rebbe already in Bavel. He was called Rabbah because he was a Rebbe. And this is after the expulsion by the Romans. Most Jews were expelled from the Holy Land. And there was a period of time that most Jews lived in Bavel, which is today Iraq. And that's where the Jews lived. And that's where the big yeshivas were. And that's where the Jewish life was the center of Jewish life. And there was a period when Rabbah was one of the spiritual leaders of world Jewry centered there. And Rabbah spoke to his students, what is a tzaddik, what's a rasha, what's a Beinoni? And Rabbah said, for example, I'm a Beinoni. And all of his students would look at him aghast. Rabbah, you're a Beinoni? If you're a Beinoni, then what are we? If you're a tzaddik, then we stand a chance. But if maybe we're Beinonis, we're regular guys. But how can you say you're a Beinoni? And we said before, Rabbah was teaching. This is not false humility. False humility is not humility. He was teaching them. This is a teaching moment. He's saying, for example, I'm a Beinoni. That means Rabbah actually believed he's a Beinoni. How could Rabbah believe he's a Beinoni? He never stopped learning. Day and night he was studying Torah with such desire and passion. B'chafetza v'chasheika tshuka nefesh shekeika l'Hashem. He was full of passion and desire and pleasure in his studying Torah. With ba'ava rabba, with great love. Ki b'shas krishma tefillah. Like you see a person davening, he's on fire with davening. Rabba was on fire with learning Torah. So why did he consider himself to be a Beinoni? Because you can be on fire with Yiddishkeit and still have latent evil. So Rabba also, he said, I'm a Beinoni, because he said, he really judged himself in a way. He says, just because I'm davening and learning all the time, I enjoy davening, I learn, I love Hashem, I love Yiddishkeit. That doesn't mean I'm guaranteed that there's nothing brewing inside. I put to sleep my Yetzer Hara. Perhaps if I would leave, if I would have to go away from the Beis HaMedrash, if I'd have to leave this holy space which I'm busy with, which I love so much, if I'd have to leave and go outside, it's possible my Yetzer Hara would come to the fore. V'nidma b'einav k'beinoni hamispal kol hayayin. He thought he was like a Beinoni, it's davening all day. If a Beinoni would be davening all day, never go out in the street, he's always on fire with the love of Hashem, it doesn't mean there's no bear hidden inside of him. Like we said before, the Beinoni, even when he's davening, even when he's on fire, there's still evil possibility, evil asleep, like it's asleep. Hibernation. When the bear's in hibernation, you can party. But watch out. Don't take it for granted. There's a Gemara that says, people, if only they could daven all day, we would be better off than we are. If we would daven all day. So that's what's happened with Beinoni. So the good news over here, I think, is, and I like to take a lesson of things that are beyond regular person. So for all of us who may not necessarily be a Beinoni, get busy with doing good stuff and you'll stay out of trouble. Because let's take the idea from Tanya. The Rabbah himself looked at himself, he said, just because I'm learning and studying all day and night, I still could have Yetzer Hara. So let's say you know yourself to have a big Yetzer Hara. If you get busy with doing good stuff, you'll put your Yetzer Hara asleep for a while. And especially doing good stuff with a passion. There's so much to Yiddishkeit. And I've said this so many times, is studying Torah. There's so many commentaries in Torah. There's commentaries on Torah that are philosophical, that look at every story in the Torah and every mitzvah in a philosophical way. There's so many stories, commentators on the Torah that look at the moral message. Not about the legal message, the moral message. There's so many messages in the Torah that are there to inspire us to become passionate about something. Inspirational message. So everybody should find in Yiddishkeit and in Torah something that is going to get them busy. And if you get busy in a holy way, you'll stay out of trouble. And have a good night.